Hello, I'm Ralph Martins. I'm the Director of Research at the Australian Alzheimer's Research Foundation and the Professor of Aging and Alzheimer's Disease at Edith Cowan University and Macquarie University. I've been involved in Alzheimer's disease for the last 36 years. And in that time, I've seen some major developments which are very exciting for the early diagnosis and prevention of Alzheimer's disease. I started my work with Professor Colin Masters at the Sir Charles Gardner Hospital, where for the first time we identified the toxic substance that builds up in the brain of people who get Alzheimer's. Up till then, people could only be diagnosed after they were dead. We use the term post-mortem examination of the brain to say they definitely had Alzheimer's. So we isolated this small protein called beta amyloid. And beta amyloid is to Alzheimer's disease what cholesterol is to heart disease. We all make cholesterol, we all make beta amyloid, but when the levels are elevated, it leads to disease. In the case of beta amyloid, it causes Alzheimer's type dementia. Since its discovery now in 1984, beta amyloid has led to the understanding of its metabolism, its parent molecule, what factors regulate it that can lead to disease or protect against disease. And we've come to recognize from the work undertaken at the Australian Alzheimer's Research Foundation from a major Australian study called the Australian Imaging Biomarkers Lifestyle Study of Aging that factors such as sleep, diet, exercise all play important roles in regulating the levels of this toxic protein amyloid in the brain. And now a number of our researchers are doing some exciting work along these lines. Dr. Stephanie Rennie-Smith is playing a key role in understanding how sleep impacts on the brain. We know that post-sleep leads to an increased buildup of this toxic protein in the brain, and she's now undertaking clinical trials to improve the quality of sleep and thus the health of our brains. Dr. Belinda Brown is playing a key role in understanding the role of exercise in protecting our brains and our minds, and trying to determine how much is needed and how often and to how much intensity is involved in improving the quality of our brains and clearing this toxic protein out of the brains. Work at the foundation has also demonstrated that diet is crucial, particularly the Mediterranean type of diet, which is a diet rich in fish, fruits and vegetables, low sugar intake, and moderate alcohol consumption. And it's had a profound effect on the amyloid buildup if you adhere strongly to this type of diet. So these separate areas of research have provided considerable insight into what we can do to protect ourselves against Alzheimer's. But we've now assembled these different aspects of, and developed what we call a multimodal or a combination approach for the prevention of Alzheimer's disease. And this work is an international collaboration. It was initially started in Finland by Professor Mia Kivipelto to show that this approach has a profound effect on lowering and reducing the cognitive decline that we see with older people. It's been taken on by our colleagues in the United States, and their study is called the US Pointer Study, and we were invited to join them and have attracted significant but not sufficient funding yet to undertake what we call the Australian Arrow Study that brings together all these different factors and including attention to vascular risk factors and brain training programs. So the Australian Arrow will commence in September this year, where we'll be looking at 600 Australians above the age of 60, and half of them will be given this very intense intervention program to ask the question, can we slow this rate of decline in people at high risk of Alzheimer's? So this is a very exciting study. It has considerable benefits to the community, and if successful, can be rolled out to the wider community within a relatively short period of time. The other exciting area that we're working on is called ADNET, Alzheimer's Disease Network, which brings together researchers, scientists and clinicians throughout Australia. And again, this work was built on the work that we did at the foundation in the Australian Imaging Biomarkers Lifestyle Study of Aging, which initially included just Perth and Melbourne. It's now going to be a major NHMRC funded study where one of our goals is to set up clinical trials. So people ready to get into clinical trials. And so we increase the volume of trials that are currently done on dementia in Australia, because this is the major limiting factor for drugs to be assessed. Compared to cancer, it represents 1% of all trials that the cancer trials do. So we really need to up it, and this allows us to do this exciting approach. We're also going to create memory clinics throughout Australia to give people a greater opportunity to come forward early for testing. Hand in hand with our intervention programs is developing early diagnostic tests for Alzheimer's. And these diagnostic tests are much before the onset of symptoms. We recognize that people can show signs of the pathology in their brain 20 years before any symptoms are seen. And this came out of our ABLE study, where we could take brain images. So during life, we can diagnose Alzheimer's 20 years with confidence before the brain is severely damaged. But that's an expensive exercise, and what our aim is now to develop a relatively cheap and accessible blood test or an eye test for Alzheimer's. And here at the foundation, we are working in both these major areas of research. We have one of 3 cameras at the foundation. We have another based at Macquarie University, which works closely with us to look at changes in the eye that reflect changes in the brain. And we already have some rather promising results that indicate that we can use images of the eye to predict Alzheimer's early. I'm also very excited about developing a blood test for Alzheimer's, and it's been taken probably 30 years of my life to reach this point where we can say that blood biomarkers have come of age. So we can now measure proteins in the blood that can diagnose people having Alzheimer's, the clinical form of Alzheimer's, and very recently our team have identified a panel of blood biomarkers that reflect changes in people well before the onset of symptoms. This is extremely exciting research. This will make a huge difference for early intervention. And we have the first machine dedicated to Alzheimer's disease in the country, which will be commencing in September this year. That will be a game changer. So these are really exciting areas of research that the foundation is supporting our key researchers to undertake. But we're also looking towards the future at areas that we think really need attention. One of the areas we think is very important to pay attention to is COVID-19 and dementia. We know that most of the people who got severely affected by COVID-19 were older people, and they happen to have the same risk factors that Alzheimer's disease people have, particularly type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity. And these same factors are regulated by lifestyle. So in a way, if we target the same programs that reduce our risk of dementia, it may reduce our risk of susceptibility to infectious agents such as COVID-19. So it's a very strong link. What's even more interesting is very recently our colleagues in the United Kingdom have published a paper to show that the blood biomarkers that we've seen for Alzheimer's are elevated in people who've been infected with COVID-19, suggesting that they may be at a higher risk of getting dementia later on. So I'm very excited about undertaking this work here at the Foundation to address these questions. Finally, while people think of Alzheimer's disease as a disease of old age, and in a large majority of cases it is, there are younger people who get dementia, people in their 30s and late 20s. They usually have a gene that causes Alzheimer's. And my team here in Perth at the foundation are investigating this cohort in collaboration with 10 to 12 groups around the world, because it's a relatively rare disease, but it allows us to predict disease with extreme accuracy, and these people will be the ones who will provide the answers for the vast majority of us to get later onset Alzheimer's disease. Even more excitingly, we are turning our attention to looking at childhood dementia. People think of that as unheard of, but children as old as 5 or 6 years start getting dementia. It's usually a disease where both mom and dad pass the gene on. They need both of them to show the disease. So this is a very new area. It's unfunded, but I think it's very important. You know, as they're learning words, they're starting to unlearn these words. So I've been passionately moved by it, and I saw it for the first time last year. And so we hope to really make a difference in this space. Take the knowledge we've learned from the Alzheimer's at older age and apply it to the dementia in younger age. There's a buildup of other substances, so it's the same story in a way. The brain loses its ability to get rid of some substances that turn out to be toxic. So we want to look at ways in which we can develop treatments to address this issue. Our work is very important that we are collaborative, and that's been my big mission in life. I bring people together, and I've done it nationally, and we're doing it internationally, because this disease is a very complex disease that requires as many minds and bodies to attack it, so we can get a resolution sooner. Thank you.